While I was enjoying a quiet dinner at my daughter's place in Cedar Falls, my phone rang out of nowhere. It was my neighbor, old Henry, and his voice was shaking. "John, are you at home right now?" "No, Henry, I'm still at Emily's house," I replied, glancing at my half-eaten plate of roast chicken. "Then who's in your house?" he whispered, so quietly I barely heard him. I felt a chill run down my back. Before I could even get up from the table, my daughter's husband, Mike, insisted I stay and chuckled nervously. I noticed how tense he looked, but he just waved off my worry and told me not to get worked up. You have no idea what he was hiding. Earlier that week, the kitchen door at my house had slammed open so hard that I dropped my mug. My son, Ryan, barged in, not even bothering to knock, his old Letterman jacket catching on the frame as he stumbled inside. His eyes were wild, like a man cornered, and his hands shook as he fiddled with the zipper. "Dad, I need some cash. Tonight, $25,000. I set down my mug next to a stack of unopened mail, trying to keep my hands steady. The sunset threw long shadows across Ryan's worn face. His shirt was wrinkled, half untucked, and the dark bags under his eyes hadn't been there the last time I saw him. "What sort of mess have you gotten into this time, son?" I asked, the weight of disappointment heavy in my chest. Ryan started pacing the kitchen, his boots clacking across the floor. He couldn't sit, couldn't meet my eyes. He slammed his fist on the table, making the salt shaker jump. "It's complicated, Dad. Something went bad with a business deal. I have to make things right tonight." I kept my voice level, though my jaw was set tight. "Is it business? Or is it another gambling debt?" Ryan's cheeks went red. He spun to face me, blocking my way out. "It's none of your business. I just need the money. I know you have it. You sold the old house, remember?" The house. 3 generations of Clark's sweat and history, sold so I could afford a peaceful retirement. The money was supposed to carry me through the rest of my days, not vanish into some casino. "How much do you owe them, Ryan?" I asked, stepping closer and catching the shake in his hands when he thought I wasn't looking. He bristled. "There's no them. I just need the money. You wouldn't understand, Dad." But I did understand. I'd heard all these stories before. Last year it was 12 grand for a sure thing at the track. The year before, 8 grand lost at poker. Every time, Ryan swore it would be the last. "No, son. Not this time." I looked him right in the eyes. His face went pale, then red. "What do you mean, not this time? I'm your son." "That's exactly why I'm saying no," I replied. "Every dollar I give you disappears at the blackjack table. I can't do it anymore, Ryan." He exploded. "I'm asking my own father for help, and you call it enabling? You're 38 years old. When will you stop running to me to fix your mistakes?" He stared at me, chest heaving, and suddenly his face changed. There was something cold there I'd never seen before. "You'll regret this, old man," he said, so quiet it sent a shiver through me. "You think you're above it all, sitting on your nest egg, while your own son's in trouble? Maybe it's time you learn what real trouble looks like." Without another word, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I watched from the porch as he jumped into his rusty Ford and sped down the street. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the distant buzz of lawnmowers and the creaking of the old house around me. I spent the rest of that weekend avoiding the kitchen, busying myself with yard work, but Ryan's words echoed in my head, "You'll regret this, old man." Every time I walked by the table, I could still see his eyes. Monday morning, I tried to get back to normal, nursing my coffee in the living room when the old phone rang at exactly 10:15. "Hey, Dad." Ryan's voice sounded strange, lighter. "Just wanted to apologize for the other night. I was out of line." I paused, suspicious. Ryan had never apologized without being pushed. "Is that right?" "Yeah. I've been thinking about what you said. You're right. I can't keep coming to you every time I mess up. He sounded almost like the boy I remembered, the one who'd catch fireflies in the yard and bring them in a jar. This time will be different, Dad. I promise. He kept going. Lisa and I want to have you over for dinner Wednesday night. She's making that stew you like. We want to be a real family again. Lisa, his wife, had always been the steady one. Maybe she was finally rubbing off on him. Wednesday, huh? What time? 6:30. We moved last month, 149 Willow Lane, blue house across from the middle school. Lisa keeps talking about how we need family traditions. I wrote down the address, my stomach heavy with doubt. The call ended, and I just sat there, staring at the napkin where I'd scribbled it. Something about it all felt rehearsed, but I wanted to believe Ryan might be changing. Still, that evening, I kept checking the address on the napkin, wondering if I should even go. Even after locking up the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ryan's face, not the apologetic son from today, but the stranger who'd threatened me on Friday. The man desperate for money, willing to say anything. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was coming next. Tuesday morning came with a restless energy I couldn't shake. After a night of tossing and turning, I stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window at the street. My hands curled around my coffee mug, knuckles white. I kept replaying Ryan's call in my head, how genuine he'd sounded, how perfectly he'd hit every family note. But after 38 years of raising that boy, I'd learned to spot the difference between true regret and a carefully practiced performance. That's when I noticed it. A silver pickup parked across the street, one I'd never seen before, just sitting in front of the neighbor's house. Early morning dew still clung to the windshield. I'd seen it late the previous evening too, as I'd brought the trash cans in, but assumed it belonged to a guest visiting the neighbors. Now, in the clear light, I could make out a figure inside, middle-aged, pale, fidgety. I set my mug down and went outside, boots crunching on the driveway. The man in the truck startled as I approached, lowering his window with obvious reluctance. "Morning," I said, keeping my tone friendly, neighborly. "Everything all right? Truck trouble?" Yes, sir. Engine overheated. I'm just letting her cool down before I try again." His voice was pitched too high, his eyes never quite meeting mine. "Virginia plates. Odd, for a broken-down vehicle in our little Iowa suburb. If you need help, I spent 40 years fixing up everything from tractors to Chevys. Happy to take a look." He shook his head quickly. "Thanks, but my buddy's coming soon. Think it's an electrical issue, or maybe the fuel line. I got it covered." His story changed even as he spoke. Tools in the truck bed, but his nervousness told another story. "Well, I'm right across the street if you need me. John Clark." I pointed to my house, watching as his eyes darted to it, lingering a second too long. "There's a good mechanic on Grant Avenue, just a mile down the road." He nodded, already rolling up the window. "Thanks, Mr. Clark. Appreciate it." His hands trembled on the steering wheel. Walking back, I felt a prickle of unease. The explanation had been too elaborate, the tension in his voice a little too much for a simple engine problem. I made a mental note of the license plate, ZRK 2815. You get to my age, you learn to trust your instincts. By noon, when I stepped out for the mail, the truck was gone. Wednesday came with perfect spring weather, blue sky, sunlight streaming through the curtains. The odd truck was forgotten for a while, pushed aside by my anticipation and nerves for the family dinner. Part of me hoped maybe this would finally be the turning point, that Ryan had truly decided to put his life back together. Lisa always did have a calming influence on him, and I wanted to believe in second chances. I spent most of the day oscillating between hope and suspicion. Around 5, I took out my navy blazer, polished my shoes, and pulled a bottle of red wine from the cabinet, a gift for Lisa. I even trimmed my beard, wanting to look my best. As I left, I nearly ran into my neighbor, Henry, who was watering his roses. "Well now, John, don't you look sharp tonight? Special occasion?" "Family dinner," I said, holding up the wine. "Ryan invited me over. First time in a long while." "That's good to hear. Family is what keeps us going at our age." He smiled, genuine and kind. "Give him a chance. Sometimes all it takes is one good evening to start fixing old wounds." The drive to their new place took me through streets I didn't know well, past the familiar Little League fields, across the Willow Creek Bridge, then into a new development where every lawn was neat and every house looked fresh painted. Surprising, considering Ryan's money troubles. I parked behind Lisa's sedan, checked my reflection one last time, and headed up the walk. Through the front window, I saw movement, shadows flickering behind drawn curtains. The porch light snapped on just as I approached, and Ryan swung open the door before I could even knock. "Dad!" Right on time, as always. He gave me a hug, squeezing a little too tightly, like he wanted to show the world we were close. Lisa appeared in the doorway, all smiles but a bit too brisk in her movements. She took the wine, thanking me with a kind of nervous energy. Inside, the house gleamed, floors shining, the scent of furniture polish lingering beneath the aroma of stew. The dining table was set with a precision that felt unnatural, as if prepared for a magazine photo shoot. Crystal glasses, linen napkins, even fresh flowers in a vase. Everything looked staged. Lisa led me to the table, showing off little improvements they'd made around the house. Ryan was quick to highlight how he'd refinished the floors, painted the walls, put up new curtains. She was almost jumpy, pouring wine with a trembling hand. Dinner was a display. Stew, mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, all arranged perfectly on fancy china. Ryan made a point of opening the wine with a flourish. "A toast," he said, raising his glass, "to new beginnings and to family." Lisa echoed the sentiment, though her voice trembled slightly. Conversation drifted through safe topics, childhood memories, funny stories about old family cars, the time Ryan flooded the garage trying to clean his bike. But it felt rehearsed, like they'd planned every beat of the conversation ahead of time. Whenever I tried to ask about Ryan's work, their finances, or even their move, both would dodge the question, redirecting with vague answers and quick laughter. Lisa kept her hands busy, serving more food, wiping invisible crumbs, refilling water glasses. Ryan checked his watch, glancing at the clock on the wall every few minutes. I noticed, and I wondered what exactly he was timing. It was only when my phone rang, cutting through Ryan's carefully scripted story, that I realized just how tightly wound the tension was in that house. The caller ID showed Henry Jenkins. I excused myself, stepping into the hall to answer. "John, are you at home tonight?" Henry's voice was urgent. "I just saw lights moving around inside your house. Flashlight beams, not normal lights. Someone's going through your rooms. Should I call the police?" The forks slipped from my fingers, clattering onto my plate. My heart hammered in my chest. "Yes, Henry. Call them now. I'm leaving this minute." As I grabbed my jacket, I glanced back at Ryan and Lisa. Their faces had gone pale. Lisa's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped a plate. Ryan tried to laugh it off, but his voice was too loud, too forced. "Oh, come on, Dad. Henry's probably just seeing things. He gets jumpy at night." I stopped, really looking at my son for the first time in years. His eyes were wild, his smile brittle. "Someone's in my house, Ryan. I need to go, now." He moved to block my path, voice rising in false cheer, but his body tense as a coiled spring. "Let's finish dinner first, Dad. I'll go with you later." "You know Henry, he's always overreacting." My patience snapped. Get out of my way, son! I mean it. He hesitated, torn between defiance and something darker. I could see the sweat breaking out on his forehead. Lisa stood frozen, her eyes wide, the dish towel clenched in white-knuckled hands. At that moment, I realized the truth. Ryan wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to stall me. In that split second, I saw through everything: the over-the-top dinner, the carefully rehearsed small talk, the too slick apologies. It was all a smokescreen, a desperate attempt to keep me away from my own home for just long enough. Ryan's entire act fell apart in front of me, his eyes darting from the front door to the clock, then back to me. I squared my shoulders, feeling every year in my bones, but standing firm the way my father taught me. Ryan, move aside. This isn't a debate. My house is being robbed while you're trying to distract me. His face changed, his fake concern slipping into something harsher. He actually stepped in front of me, broad shoulders blocking the hallway. Dad, don't be ridiculous. It's probably just some wiring problem. Old houses do that, you know. Don't lie to me, I said, voice low and even. Why are you so determined to keep me here? He tried to smile, but it came out more like a snarl. I'm not. Just calm down, let's talk this through. Behind him, Lisa was pressed against the wall, the dish towel now twisted almost in half, her eyes full of guilt and fear. I realized then she knew something. Maybe not the whole story, but enough. Ryan. Move. No, I said, using the voice I'd only ever used when he was a teenager and truly crossed a line. For a moment I thought he might lash out. His jaw clenched, fists tightening at his sides. Instead, he reached behind him and twisted the deadbolt with a sharp click, pocketing the key before I could react. You're not leaving, Dad? Not until we sort this out, he said. There was a menace in his voice that chilled me to the core. I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Ryan's face. You just locked me in your house while someone is robbing mine, I said, my voice steady as stone. What could possibly justify that? Ryan's shoulders slumped for a moment, a crack in his bravado. You don't understand, Dad. There are people involved you don't want to mess with. People who don't forgive debts or accept excuses. The truth, at last, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. Not only had Ryan orchestrated this, but he was willing to use me as a pawn to save himself from his own bad choices. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I need to use the bathroom, I said quietly, making my way down the hall. Ryan hesitated, but basic decency, or maybe just habit, kept him from stopping me. I closed the door behind me, my mind racing. The bathroom window faced the backyard. I knew from previous visits it was just high enough to be manageable if I moved quick. The old latch squeaked as I lifted it. The screen popped out with only a small protest. I eased myself through, landing hard in Lisa's flower bed. My knee barked in pain, but nothing broke. I could hear Ryan's voice, rising in panic as he realized the bathroom door was ajar. My car was in the driveway. I moved fast, faster than I'd done in years, slipping behind the wheel, jamming the key in the ignition, and reversing out with barely a look behind me. I drove 3 blocks before I let myself breathe. I was shaking, part rage, part heartbreak. My own son had set me up. Not just to lose a few dollars, not just to be embarrassed, but to be robbed by his accomplices while he played the role of doting host. The drive back to my street was a blur. As I turned the corner, I saw the flashing blue and red lights of the police cars, their reflections bouncing off every window on my block. Henry, true to his word, had called the authorities. Neighbors clustered outside, murmuring in small, nervous groups. I parked behind the last patrol car, hurrying up the walk to my own front door, where Officer Jackson met me with a steady, professional calm. Mr. Clark? We've apprehended a suspect in your basement. Your neighbor was extremely helpful in identifying suspicious activity. Henry stood off to the side, arms crossed. a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "Told you I'd keep an eye out, John," he said. Inside, I followed the officer to the basement door, where two policemen were cuffing a pale, twitchy man I recognized immediately, the same stranger from the silver pickup. His hands were covered in grease and dust, and he wouldn't meet my eye. "He claims he was hired to break into your safe," Officer Jackson said quietly. "He's already started talking, said your son Ryan set the whole thing up." The words made me reel, even though I'd already suspected as much. "Ryan?" "Yes, sir. Said your son offered him $5,000 to break into your house while you were at dinner." I stared at the man in the cuffs, searching for some sign of remorse. I saw only fear. "Did you get into the safe?" I asked. "No, sir. He didn't. Your neighbor's call got us here in time." Officer Jackson led the man to the squad car, leaving me standing alone in the ruined silence of my basement, surrounded by the marks of a desperate burglary: the crowbar, the scratched safe, the mess on the floor. "Back upstairs?" the officer asked. "Do you want to press charges against your son?" I looked out the window at the flashing lights, thinking of all the years I'd tried to rescue Ryan from himself, all the times I'd hoped for a different outcome. The weight of disappointment was heavy, but I knew what had to be done. "Yes," I said finally. "Full charges. For Ryan Clark and anyone else involved." Officer Jackson nodded, his expression grave. "You're making the right decision, sir." As the police finished up, neighbors drifted back to their houses. Henry walked over, his face softening. "You did the right thing, John. Sometimes you have to let them hit bottom, even if it hurts like hell." I nodded, my throat tight. The house felt empty, stripped of safety and trust. My son was gone, my home violated, but I was still standing. That night, as I sat alone in my living room, the old grandfather clock ticking steadily, I realized that sometimes a man has to draw a line, not just for himself, but for the ones he loves, even if they can't see it. And sometimes the ones you love are the ones who break your heart the hardest. 2 days after the police hauled that burglar out of my basement, my house was quieter than ever. The commotion had faded, replaced by an uneasy stillness. It wasn't just the violation of someone breaking in, it was the realization that my own flesh and blood had orchestrated it. I spent the next morning going through every room, double-checking locks and cleaning up the evidence of the attempted theft. The safe still stood, battered but unbroken, a silent testament to 40 years of hard work and, now, betrayal. It was Friday afternoon when the call finally came from Detective Sullivan. "Mr. Clark, we've arrested your son Ryan. He's in custody now, and his wife Lisa is cooperating. We'll need you to come to the station to make a full statement." I agreed, my hands shaking a little as I put down the phone. Lisa, the woman who had tried so hard to hold her family together, was now left alone to face the consequences of Ryan's choices. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her, even as I steeled myself for what had to come next. The police station was a world away from my quiet life. Everything smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee. The air was heavy with the kind of tension only found in places where people's futures change in a heartbeat. I sat across from Detective Sullivan and told him everything, about Ryan's demand for money, the forced dinner, the stranger in the pickup, the desperate, final confrontation. Every detail felt like a nail in the coffin of my hope for my son. Afterwards, as I walked back out to the parking lot, I saw Lisa waiting in her car, face pale and drawn. I hesitated, then knocked gently on her window. She rolled it down, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry, John," she whispered. I didn't know everything, but I knew something wasn't right. Ryan was desperate. I tried to talk him out of it, but I didn't know what else to do." I nodded, my anger already spent. "You're not to blame, Lisa. We all have to live with the choices we make. Ryan made his." She looked away, wiping her eyes. "I hope you can forgive him one day." I hope so, too, I said, though I didn't know if it was true. That night, the loneliness hit harder than ever. My phone rang a dozen times, neighbors checking in, the detective updating me, even my old friend Henry, who insisted on bringing over a casserole, just in case. I thanked everyone, but mostly, I just wanted silence. The house felt bigger, emptier. I moved slowly from room to room, putting away keepsakes, locking windows, staring at the places where Ryan had grown up, his childhood bedroom, now just a guest room, the old garage where we'd fixed up his first car together. Memories chased each other around the house, sometimes warm, sometimes bitter. I found an old photo of Ryan and me at the county fair. He must have been 10, grinning wildly as he held up a blue ribbon for the pie-eating contest. I sat with that picture in my lap, wondering where things had gone so wrong. By Sunday, word had spread through our little town. Some folks called to offer sympathy, some to gossip. A few were angry that I'd pressed charges. "He's your son, John," they said. "How could you send him to jail?" But most understood, even if they couldn't say it aloud. There's only so many times you can bail someone out before you have to let them face the consequences. Lisa came by the house one afternoon to collect some of Ryan's things. She knocked gently, carrying a box of old clothes and some paperwork. We sat at the kitchen table, talking in quiet voices while she packed. She told me Ryan's debts were worse than she'd ever imagined: gambling, bad loans, money owed to people you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley. She said she'd started divorce papers, but that part of her still hoped he'd get help. "I'm sorry, John," she said again, voice cracking. "I never wanted any of this." I put a hand on hers. "None of us did, Lisa. But you have to take care of yourself now." After she left, I felt lighter somehow, like a weight had shifted off my chest. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. I called my lawyer the next day, arranging to update my will and put extra protections on the house. The detective called to say Ryan's bail hearing was set for Tuesday. I wrote down the details, my pen steady. That evening, Henry came over with a couple of cold beers. We sat on the porch in companionable silence, watching the sun slip down behind the maples. Finally, he said, "You did the hard thing, John. Most men wouldn't have had the guts. Wasn't much choice." I replied, voice hoarse. "You spend your life hoping your kids will do better than you, not end up making the same mistakes. Or worse." Henry nodded. "But you gave him every chance. Some folks never get even one." The quiet stretched between us, comfortable and familiar. As darkness fell and the porch light flickered on, I realized I wasn't alone after all. Neighbors waved as they walked their dogs. Kids rode by on their bikes, shouting to one another. Life, in its stubborn way, went on. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For the first time since Ryan walked into my kitchen asking for money, I felt a kind of peace, maybe not forgiveness, but something like acceptance. I'd done what needed doing. The rest, as my father used to say, was up to God and the courts. Tuesday dawned gray and overcast, the sort of weather that seemed to match my mood. I woke early, unable to shake the feeling of something unfinished hanging over me. Ryan's bail hearing was at 9 o'clock, and though part of me wanted to avoid the courthouse altogether, I knew I had to be there. Not just for closure, but to look my son in the eye and remind myself I'd done the right thing, hard as it was. I dressed in my best shirt, the one Lisa used to iron for church, and drove into town. The courthouse was already bustling, reporters hanging around the steps hoping for a story. In a small town, news travels faster than wildfire, and the word, "family scandal," is irresistible. I kept my head down, nodding to familiar faces, and made my way inside. The hearing was brief, the judge stern. Ryan stood in a wrinkled shirt, hands cuffed in front of him, looking smaller than I remembered. The prosecutor recited the charges: conspiracy, attempted burglary, endangering an elder, and more. The defense lawyer, a tired-looking man with a cheap suit, argued that Ryan was not a flight risk, but the judge wasn't moved. Bail was set high, far more than Ryan could pay. For a moment, Ryan looked up and met my eyes. I saw a flash of the boy he used to be, the one who used to chase fireflies in our backyard, who built soapbox racers with me out of old lumber and bicycle wheels. But that look passed, replaced by bitterness and shame. Lisa sat in the gallery, hands folded tight in her lap, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would all be okay, but I knew better. Some things you can't fix with a hug or a few kind words. The bailiff led Ryan out, and I stood, heart heavy, and walked out into the fresh air. I spent the rest of the day doing small chores, anything to keep my hands busy. I repainted the front steps, weeded the garden, even replaced the squeaky hinge on the screen door. Neighbors waved as they passed, offering silent support. Some brought over food, as if grief could be sopped up with casserole or pie. By late afternoon, the phone started ringing again, old friends, cousins, folks I hadn't spoken to in months. Some called to offer sympathy, others just to pry for details. But one call surprised me most of all. It was Lisa. She sounded exhausted. "John, I just wanted you to hear from me," Ryan called from jail. "He says he's sorry, that he never wanted to hurt you, that it just got out of control." She hesitated, voice trembling. "He wanted me to ask you if you could forgive him. He says he's going to take whatever the court gives him and try to get help." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words settle. "Lisa, I don't know if I can forgive him just yet. But I do want him to get better. Tell him that for me." She sniffled quietly. "Thank you, John. I'm moving back in with my sister for a while. I need to figure things out, too. You take care of yourself," I said softly. "You deserve better than all this." That evening, the house felt less empty, though nothing inside had changed. I started sorting through old paperwork in my office, bank statements, utility bills, a lifetime of receipts and records. I found the deed to the house, yellowed and worn, with my father's signature next to mine. I ran my finger over the ink, remembering the day we closed on this place, how proud we both were. It was more than just a house, it was a symbol of all our family had worked for. As I sorted, I came across a dusty box of family photos. Ryan at Little League, beaming under his cap. Lisa and Ryan's wedding, full of hope and promise. Birthdays, Christmases, backyard barbecues, all the moments that, for a time, had seemed so ordinary, now so precious and far away. I lingered over each one, letting the memories fill the silence. Wednesday morning, I woke to a new sense of resolve. I called my lawyer to ask about updating the locks and security system. "Let's make sure nothing like this ever happens again," I told him. "And let's update the will while we're at it. I want to make sure everything's airtight, no more loopholes, no more handouts." He agreed, and by noon we'd scheduled the paperwork. I felt a strange relief as we hung up, not happiness, exactly, but a sense of control returning to my life. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could make sure I wouldn't be so easily fooled again. That afternoon, Henry stopped by, bringing over a newspaper and a smile. "You know, John, I heard from some folks in town. Your story's made its way around, and you got more support than you realize. Folks know you did what you had to. They're on your side." I thanked him, grateful for his friendship. We sat on the porch for an hour, talking about baseball, gardens, and everything but family. As the sun dipped low, I watched the shadows stretch across my yard, golden and gentle. After Henry left, I took one last walk through the house, checking windows, securing doors. I paused in Ryan's old room, still painted blue, still lined with dusty trophies and forgotten dreams. I sat on his old bed and whispered a prayer, for forgiveness, for healing, for the strength to keep going. For the first time since this all began, I realized that even broken things can be rebuilt. The cracks remain, but sometimes the light shines in all the brighter for them. Thursday morning dawned brighter, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. I made my coffee and took it out to the porch, letting the morning air clear my mind. The street was quiet except for a few dog walkers and the distant sound of a lawn mower. It felt almost normal, as if life itself was gently nudging me forward. The news about Ryan's arrest had spread throughout Cedar Falls. There were no more curious reporters, no more calls from distant cousins. The excitement was gone, replaced by the everyday rhythm of small-town life. Still, every time the phone rang, my heart jumped, half expecting more bad news. But Thursday's calls were different. Old friends checking in, neighbors offering to help, Lisa's sister dropping off a pie. Their kindness helped fill some of the emptiness. Mid-morning, I started putting my house back together, one room at a time. I fixed the broken window latch in the guest room, vacuumed up the last traces of police dusting powder, and put new batteries in the smoke detectors. These simple chores gave me purpose. Each small repair was a way to reclaim my home, my routine, and my peace of mind. I spent the afternoon organizing the garage. Among the boxes, I found Ryan's old fishing pole, a little rusty but still serviceable. I remembered the last time we'd gone fishing together. He must have been 12. We spent the whole morning on the banks of the Cedar River, catching nothing but sunburns and laughter. I set the pole aside, making a silent promise to myself to try fishing again, even if I had to go alone. By late afternoon, I was tired but calmer. I sat down in my favorite armchair and opened a letter from the county court. Ryan's formal charges and court date, set for 3 weeks from now. The official words felt cold and impersonal, just lines of black print on white paper. But beneath the legal jargon, I could feel the consequences stretching ahead for both of us. Lisa called again that evening. Her voice was steadier than before, though still carrying a weight. "I thought you should know," she said. "Ryan has been assigned a public defender. They're talking about a plea bargain. He might get probation, maybe community service if the judge goes easy. But either way, he'll have to face up to what he did." I listened, letting the facts settle in. "Thank you for telling me, Lisa. How are you holding up?" She hesitated, then said, "I'm all right. My sister's been wonderful. I started looking for a job again, anything to keep busy. I think it's time to start over." I told her she was brave, and that whatever happened with Ryan, she deserved happiness and peace. "Don't let his mistakes define your life," I said softly. After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the gathering dusk, thinking about the difference between second chances and endless forgiveness. I'd given Ryan more chances than he deserved, but I also knew that holding on to anger would only hurt me in the end. Sometimes, letting go is the only way forward. The next day was quiet. I met Henry for lunch at the diner on Main Street, just like we used to before the world turned upside down. Over chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes, we talked about everything but my family. Baseball scores, weather, even plans for a fishing trip in the spring. Henry, wise as ever, said, "You're still standing, John. That's what matters. The world can knock you down, but as long as you get up, you haven't lost." I took his words to heart. That afternoon, I wrote a letter to Ryan, not an angry letter, but an honest one. I told him I still loved him, that I wanted him to get help, and that maybe one day, if he truly changed, we could rebuild what was broken. I sealed the letter, not sure if I'd ever send it, but it felt right to write the words. That night, I went for a walk through the neighborhood. The sun was setting, painting the sky with pink and orange streaks. I passed houses where porch lights were coming on, families gathering for dinner, kids playing catch in the yard. For a moment, I felt like I belonged again, part of the world instead of just watching from the sidelines. As I turned the corner back to my house, Henry waved from his porch. "Come over for a nightcap?" he called. I smiled and joined him, grateful for the simple comfort of a good friend and an easy conversation. The darkness settled over Cedar Falls, quiet and calm. For the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face whatever came next. My life wasn't what I'd planned, but it was still mine, and there was still time for new memories, new beginnings, and maybe even forgiveness. A week later, I found myself waking to sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, warming the faded tiles and bouncing off the stack of clean dishes. The air had shifted. The old house no longer felt haunted by betrayal or echoing with Ryan's angry words. Instead, it was quiet, peaceful in a way that felt earned, not given. Sunday afternoon, Henry stopped by with a couple of root beers. We sat on the porch as we often did, watching the neighborhood go about its routines. Kids tossing a football on the lawn across the street, Mrs. Callahan pruning her rosebushes, the distant sound of a lawnmower humming somewhere up the block. Henry sipped his drink and nudged me with his elbow. "You've weathered the storm, John. You did right by yourself, and by Ryan, even if it was the hard way." I looked at him, grateful for the words. "It still hurts, Henry. But I know I had no other choice. Sometimes loving someone means letting them face the consequences. I just hope, wherever he ends up, he remembers that I tried to do right by him." Henry nodded. "Sometimes, all a man can do is stand his ground and hope the people he loves find their way back." We sat a while longer in companionable silence. The world felt steady again, still full of unknowns, but steadier all the same. Over the next days, I got into a new rhythm. I cooked my own meals, started walking the trails along Willow Creek again, and even dusted off that old fishing pole. One bright morning, I packed a thermos of coffee and some sandwiches and drove out to the river bank by myself. The sky was clear, birdsong filled the air, and for a few hours I let myself simply be, an old man at peace with his thoughts, content to watch the water move past. A letter from Ryan arrived the following week. It was short, apologetic, and raw. He wrote, "Dad, I'm sorry for what I did. I don't know if I'll ever deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm getting help. The counselor here says the first step is being honest, with myself and with the people I've hurt. I miss you and Mom. I hope someday I can earn your trust back." I sat at the kitchen table, letter trembling in my hands. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for, but it was a start. I wrote back, told him I loved him, that I hoped he'd stick with his recovery, and that my door would always be open if he truly changed. I didn't promise things would go back to the way they were. That sort of trust takes time, maybe years. But I offered him my hope. Lisa called the next evening, her voice sounding lighter. "John, I wanted you to know, I got a job at the library. It's nothing fancy, but I like it. I'm learning to be happy on my own again." I congratulated her, meaning every word. "You deserve happiness, Lisa. Take good care of yourself." The summer rolled in, slow and warm. I planted tomatoes in the garden, repaired the old fence, even started volunteering at the local food pantry. The days had shape again, purpose, even joy. Sometimes I'd pass the elementary school, watching kids pour out at the end of the day, laughing and chasing each other down the block. It reminded me of when Ryan was little, how quickly time slips past if you're not paying attention. One evening, I walked over to Henry's for dinner. We sat out back as the fireflies came out, talking about everything and nothing. "You know," Henry said, "we're the last of the old guard. Most folks our age moved to Florida, or into their kids' homes. But here we are, still cooking our own dinners and minding our own business." I laughed. "I guess there's comfort in the familiar. Even if the world's changed, there's still good left in it. Good friends. Honest work. Simple pleasures." As the stars appeared overhead, I realized I'd found something stronger than forgiveness or closure: acceptance. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. The heartbreak and betrayal didn't define me. They were just another chapter in a story that was still being written. When I turned in for the night, I stood by the bedroom window, watching the moonlight touch the old sycamore in the yard. I thought of Ryan, of every mistake and every promise. I prayed for him, quietly, the way I'd done when he was a child and storms rattled the windows. I prayed he'd find his way, that he'd choose the harder right over the easy wrong. And if he ever did come back, he'd find his old man waiting, arms open, not to rescue him, but to welcome him home. Sometimes, life gives you only the pieces. You do your best to fit them together. And sometimes, if you're lucky, those pieces make something stronger than what was there before. I slept well that night. In the quiet dark, I knew I had done the right thing, even when it hurt. And in that knowledge I found peace.